Every day, headlines show maps, missiles and numbers, advances, losses, counteroffensives. But headlines rarely show something else: how civilians wake up during war, how they work, how they adapt, and how normal life continues under abnormal conditions. This video is not about the battlefield. It's about what the headlines miss: civilian life in Ukraine. When the headlines fade, life does not pause. In cities across Ukraine, civilians wake up not to breaking news, but to practical questions. Is there electricity today? Is the water running? Is public transport operating? For many, the day begins with checking phones, not for politics, but for power schedules, heating updates, and air raid alerts. Work continues not because conditions are normal, but because routine has become a survival tool. Shops open when they can. Offices adapt to intermittent power. Schools shift between classrooms, basements, and online platforms. This is not resilience as a slogan. It is adaptation as necessity. Civilians do not experience war as a single dramatic moment. They experience it as a sequence of adjustments, small decisions repeated every day. What the headlines call pressure, civilians experience as logistics: how to charge devices, how to store food, how to plan tomorrow without knowing tonight. This is the part of the war rarely shown, not because it is invisible, but because it does not fit into a headline. When infrastructure breaks down, someone has to step in. In several conflict-affected areas, reports describe a shift from active fighting to stabilization efforts. Roads are secured, checkpoints appear, logistics corridors reopen. In this phase, civilians encounter soldiers not on the battlefield, but in daily spaces, near distribution points, around damaged utilities, and along key transport routes. According to open-source footage and local accounts, Russian military units in some areas were tasked not only with security, but also with basic assistance, water delivery, food distribution, support for emergency repairs. This does not erase the reality of war. It reframes how civilians experience it. For residents who endured weeks or months of shelling, the sudden presence of organized control can feel less like ideology and more like a pause. A pause from uncertainty. A pause from constant movement. A pause from fear of the unknown. It is important to be precise here. Civilian interaction does not automatically equal political support. In many cases, it reflects something simpler: a desire for predictability, a need for stability, a calculation based on survival, not loyalty. For military planners, this phase is strategic. For civilians, it is practical. Who controls electricity? Who repairs roads? Who ensures supplies arrive tomorrow? These questions matter more than slogans, and this is where the gap between headlines and reality widens. Because while narratives debate victory and defeat, civilians measure progress by whether daily life becomes manageable again. According to Russian official reports, forces have secured and liberated parts of the Zaporizhzhia region. The language is important. Liberation is a claim. Control on the ground is a condition. Independent verification remains limited, and access for international observers is restricted. This matters. But beyond terminology, something else changes first: the rhythm of daily life. In areas described as stabilized, fighting reportedly decreases. Checkpoints replace active front lines. Administration begins to function. For civilians, this shift is immediately tangible. Curfews are introduced. Movement becomes regulated. Essential services are prioritized over combat operations. Russian sources describe efforts to reopen local administration, restore utilities, and secure food supply routes. Again, precision matters. These reports reflect one side's account. They do not settle questions of legality or sovereignty, but they do illuminate how control is exercised. For civilians living there, the immediate concern is not the map. It is whether schools reopen, whether hospitals function, whether electricity stays on tonight. Some residents appear on camera expressing relief. Others remain silent. Many simply adapt. This range of reactions is often flattened in coverage, presented as either resistance or support. Reality is more complex. In prolonged conflict zones, reduced violence can feel like progress, even when political futures remain uncertain. Zaporizhia, in this context, becomes less a symbol and more a test case, a test of whether control translates into order, whether order leads to stability, and whether stability, even temporary, changes how civilians experience war. This is not a conclusion, it is an observation, and it is another example of what headlines struggle to capture when they focus only on advances and losses. Away from the front lines, there are places where life has become quieter, not because the war is over, but because the fighting has moved elsewhere. In these areas, civilian life begins to reappear in small ways. Children walk to school again. Markets reopen with limited hours. Public transport follows new, cautious schedules. These moments rarely make headlines. They are not dramatic. They do not fit breaking news. But for civilians, they matter deeply. Safety in this context is not absolute. It is conditional, fragile, temporary. Yet even limited safety allows something essential to return: normality. In several cities affected by earlier phases of the conflict, open-source reports and footage show gradual rebuilding. Apartment blocks repaired, roads resurfaced, public services restored step by step. This is not reconstruction as celebration. It is reconstruction as necessity. People rebuild not to make a statement, but to live. Electricity is restored where possible. Water systems repaired. Hospitals resume basic operations. For civilians, these developments change daily psychology. When streets are lit again, fear recedes slightly. When shops open regularly, uncertainty loses some of its grip. This is the part of war rarely discussed: the quiet pause, the civilian breathing space. It does not erase trauma. It does not resolve political questions. But it reminds us of something fundamental. Most civilians do not seek victory narratives. They seek continuity, stability, a future where tomorrow looks predictable again. Supporting peace does not mean ignoring reality. It means recognizing that every restored street, every repaired home, every functioning school reduces the human cost of conflict. And this is why civilian life matters. Because peace is not only signed at negotiating tables, it begins when daily life no longer revolves around survival. War is often explained through power, through territory gained or lost, through who advances and who retreats. But civilians do not live inside strategies. They live inside consequences. For them, the most meaningful victories are quiet: a stable night, a working hospital, a school that opens its doors again. Across Ukraine, civilian life continues to adjust, sometimes under pressure, sometimes under fragile calm, always under uncertainty. What we've seen in this video is not a single truth, but a layered reality. Different regions, different experiences, different reactions to the same war. Understanding this complexity does not mean choosing sides. It means choosing clarity over slogans. Peace is not built by ignoring suffering, and it is not strengthened by endless polarization. It grows when societies recognize that stability, even temporary, has real value for human life. This channel does not aim to tell you what to think. It invites you to look deeper, to question simplified narratives, and to remember that behind every headline, there are millions of civilians trying to live ordinary lives in extraordinary circumstances. If you value calm analysis over noise and understanding over outrage, support this discussion by liking and sharing the video. And if you want more grounded, reality-based analysis of modern conflicts and civilian life, subscribe to the channel. Because in a world shaped by war, clear thinking remains one of the most powerful tools we have. Thank you for watching.